5 tips for solving case interviews in consulting. Hi, my name is Johannes Niari. I'm a strategy consultant, and on this channel I want to help you to learn the necessary skills that you need in your consulting career. And today I want to share 5 tips that will help you to ace the case to make it through case interviews in consulting. When I wanted to join the consulting industry, I had to prepare obviously for cases myself. So I worked through all the books. I joined online platforms. I did personal coaching in order to get the interview, to get the offer in the interview. And also nowadays, as a project manager in a strategy consulting firm, I am interviewing myself. And what I see very often is that people make some common mistakes. And of course, I did these mistakes also myself back then. But in order to help you to avoid these pitfalls, I want to share 5 tips that are very important for you to know before you go into case interviews in consulting. So with that being said, let's start directly with tip number 1. And this tip is that you take notes. What I see very often is that if the interviewer gives you some information, that people don't really take notes. They rather, try to look the interviewer in the eye, they try to be an active listener, but they don't really take notes, or they only take a few notes. But the important thing to understand is that if the interviewer gives you some information, you can be very sure that this information is important to solve the case. So really make it a habit, once the interviewer introduces you to the case material, that you really sit down, take notes, that you take a lot of notes. This is very important. And after that you confirm the understanding about the notes that you took in order to avoid any kind of mistake. So this is tip number 1, take notes. Then tip number 2 is that you ask questions. So the interviewer doesn't expect you to know all of the answers, and very often you will need some information from the interviewer. So once you got the task, once you got the case, then you make a structure. And it's always okay, if you make the structure, but also if you try to solve the case, to ask questions. So if you need some numbers, for example, ask for them. If you need some validation of your assumptions, you can ask. If you, ask for confirmation of your approach, then just ask. So it's very important to, keep the interviewer involved, to ask questions, because very often they have some very valuable information for you that they can give you. And also, if you do interviews as an interviewer, also you have these kinds of facts in the backend, so that if someone asks you, that you have this information available in order to help you to solve the case. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Rather make this a habit, that if you need information, that if you want a confirmation of your approach, that you simply ask the interviewer. Then tip number 3 that I want to give to you is that you always explain your approach. What I see very often is that if people receive the case, that they just start solving it without really explaining what they do. The big mistake or the big issue with that is that you don't always get the points for having the right solutions. If we solve case interviews together, I really want to understand how this person thinks, and I'm more interested in the thinking approach, and I want to know how structured is this person. This is more important than getting to the right number at the end. So in order to let the interviewer participate on your thoughts, it's important that you always explain what you do. So rather than just making the calculation, explain what you do. Say you take this number, you want to divide it through that number, and this is roughly the result. Here's how you get to that number. This is very important, because if you make mistakes along the way, then it's not that important. It's more important to understand that you chose the right structure. So make it a habit to always explain your approach and keep the interviewer in the loop. Then tip number 4 that I can give to you is that you simplify calculations. And here again, of course, consultancies want to see if you are able to do head calculations, if you are able to deal with some numbers. But again, it's not important to have the right result, the third place after the decimal. So it's not important to do that. It's more important, to really get a kind of feeling for the numbers and think about, okay, is this number realistic or not? So rather than to really do a calculation that explains the 4th digit after the comma, it's more important to sometimes round up to simplify numbers, because you don't want to spend hours and hours and hours doing a calculation. Rather, make it simple for you and ask if it's okay if you just round up, for example. And in most cases, you will see this is totally fine. And then tip number 5 that I can give to you is practice, practice, practice. And this is so important. People always ask, what can I do to prepare for cases? And the answer is very simple. Just practice, practice, and take the time, to get good in solving case interviews. There are so many resources out there. You can use the books, you can use platforms, you can use coachings. It doesn't really matter, what kind of approach you use. But it's very important, to practice on a daily basis until you feel very comfortable for it. Some people, only need a few weeks or a few days even, because they already have some experience. Some people, need, several months. It doesn't matter, just take the time, practice, 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 because, this is the best way to prepare for the case interview and to ace the case and get the offer. So these are 5 tips that I wanted to share with you, and these are the five most important pitfalls that you need to avoid. So if you consider these tips, if you actively prepare for cases, and if you're doing the cases, if you really focus on avoiding these mistakes we talked about, then I think you have very good chances to get the offer and to join a consulting firm. And if you like this video, if this brought value to you, then please leave a thumb up, also subscribe to this channel. And with that being said, I wish you a very successful day. Hope to talk to you soon. Goodbye, Johannes.